Now 250,000. Now, but to get 275. High, but to get 275. 3. Now 300,000. Now 3 1/4, 325. High, but to get 3 1/4, but to get 325. Now half. Now, but to get 300. And hello from Dallas, Texas at Lincoln Center. We are at the intersection of the LBJ Freeway and the North Dallas Tollway, and we are pleased and excited to have a couple of guests today, and one of those is the CEO and president of America Can and Texans Can, Richard Marquez. How are you, sir?
Doing fine, Mike. Good morning.
Good to have you with me. And then we also have Raul Machuca, and Raul is the senior social media director for both entities. Is that right?
Yes, that's right.
All right. Well, we want to welcome you too. So I'm looking forward to this get together. Richard, you and I know each other because every Saturday, pretty much, unless something comes up in between where I can't be there, we conduct the Texans Can Cars for Kids auction at Camp Wisdom and the Marvin D. Love Freeway.
Yes, Mike.
And and we've been doing that for a while.
Quite a while.
I don't even remember exactly how long.
I think back to about 2010, right around that area, that particular period of time.
Yeah. So just in giving us a brief description of what your duties are as the president and CEO, and I of course, I did a little research, learn a little bit more, It's based on instructional, organizational, financial management, planning and policy direction, and fundraising and coalition building in the community. That's what you do.
Yes.
We're going to find out more about that in a minute. You were born in Dallas.
Yes.
And I didn't know that.
Yeah, I'm a local. I'm one of those kids that grew up here. I lived out in West Dallas.
So what do you think of the bridges?
It's kind of funny because we called it the bridge to nowhere because you build a bridge to West Dallas, it's kind of like the bridge to nowhere. So all of a sudden, but it's improved the streets and done some other things. So it's a good thing.
It's raised the property values,
and it's pushed some very nice people and good people out of their neighborhood.
Well, that's great. You were born at a different time in America for education and what's going on in the world today. You've seen the whole spectrum.
Yes.
How would we describe it? How would you describe growing up in Dallas in the 50s?
It was a very unique time. We were such a small group of people, because I think at that point we were somewhere around 2% of the total population, 2-3% of the total population. Mm-hmm. So we went somewhere under the radar in a lot of ways, but we were in neighborhoods mostly. You knew exactly where we lived because the neighborhoods were pretty distinctive. There was Little Mexico over there off of Harry Hines, and then there was another place just south over by the Compton Community Center, and then there was the West Dallas neighborhood in Ledbetter, where the majority of us lived and grew up.
Which is where you grew up.
Yes.
And you still, and we were talking before the show, the same church you've been going to your entire life, you're still going to Mass every weekend.
Every Sunday morning, it's my Groundhog's Day. I told you, it's kind of like every Sunday morning I find myself in that choir loft at 9 o'clock in the morning. And so it's kind of like I begin my week and end my week right there. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of an interesting thing to me because my life is kind of defined right there at that moment.
Well, that defines stability.
Yeah.
Which goes back to the 50s and the 60s, the early years.
There is an issue related to the whole issue of morals and the issue of character and all the value issues. But you have to understand that I was raised a Catholic kid, so I went to Catholic school all my life, and I was influenced by the Irish nun and the Spanish priests because as time grew, I figured out that the nuns really didn't have anything, and so later on in life I realized that those women gave up everything that they had, everything, only to come to West Dallas and educate a bunch of little Mexican kids.
Yeah.
And they did a very good job throughout the years for over 40 years. So it's humbling to think that another human being would give up their life that way.
I think I think this society that we live in doesn't get it for the most part.
You know, the interesting thing that I've noticed, Mike, is that the pendulum is kind of swinging back. I think we moved away and we went through the selfish era where it was nothing but me, nothing but me. And the irony is that these millennials that we talk about, I think they have a deeply rooted value system. They're kind of a unique group of people. You know, they take longer to marry.
Yeah,
I've
seen that.
But they stay married. That's the other thing.
Yeah.
And they parent better because they do more research and they think about their actions and so on and so forth.
And they've watched a lot of things happen.
Yes, they've been through a lot, through all these broken homes, broken families, and all these other kinds of things. I've seen the pendulum swing one way to access and all the other things, and I see it coming back in a very inspiring direction. You know, I've always been one of those that says, there's nothing wrong with America's children. Nothing. It's just...
it's the parents.
Well, you know, I'll tell you what I used to tell people, and I still say that to people. I said, look, none of us ever got to pick our parents. And these children don't get to pick their parents either.
Yep.
So the only place where you can make a difference in their lives is in the schoolhouse.
Yeah.
And so if the schoolhouses do it better, then we won't have a problem with these children.
Yeah. Yeah, we even you were raised in the 50s. I was raised in the 60s. And I remember everything about growing up in the 60s. I can still remember my kindergarten teacher, my first grade teacher. Every single teacher, I remember them like they were here now. Most of them are deceased. But what I remember probably the most was my fourth grade teacher, and we lived in California for about 3 or 4 years. And I remember her name was Mrs. Withy, and her son worked as a substitute teacher. But Mrs. Withy, and this was in Brea, California, in Orange County, I was standing by the window one time. I was always kind of a teacher's pet. I don't know if you can imagine that. But I was standing by the window by myself, and it was either before school or after school. There was nobody there but me. And I was standing at this globe, and I was looking at this globe, and Mrs. Withy says, Mike, I believe you could do anything you wanted to do. If you wanted to be the president of the United States, you could do that. And I never forgot that. And not saying that I would want to ever be the president of the United States, although evidently almost anybody can do it. But it was just that was one of those defining moments when your teacher makes you believe you're something.
And that's my point, Mike. A lot of teachers don't understand the actual power that they have over with children. And that one good word can actually create a huge difference for a child.
You mentioned parents, so let's touch on your parents. Tell me about your parents.
Both my parents were immigrants. I'm first generation American. My parents both came from Mexico. My mother actually came very young. She was a baby when they crossed the border. My father came when he was about 15 years of age. There was a rebellion in Mexico in the late 20s, which was called the Cristero movement. It was the government was persecuting the Catholic Church, and so my dad's brother was very involved in fighting the government, and so his parents were killed. His brother left Mexico, and so not his parents, but my father and his mother both came to the United States as political refugees. And so my father and my mother met in Corsicana in a little ranch where they were working, and they got married. A couple of my brothers and sisters' birth certificates are out of Venice.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And eventually they moved to a little house in West Dallas. My grandfather, my grandmother, and my uncles and everybody else moved, and we all grew up in West Dallas.
How many brothers and sisters?
I had 14. I'm one of 14 kids. 3 of them died early in birth. There were 11 of us. I'm number 9. So I tell people, I said, you know why I'm anti-abortion. There won't be any more number 9s.
Well, your early education in Dallas, where did you go to school?
I went to St. Mary of Carmel School, obviously, until in the 8th grade. Then I left the 8th grade and I went to Crozer Tech High School. And high school was too easy. I went, you're going to Catholic school. So when I got to the public school, it was kind of funny because on the first day, the lady said, we didn't know what classes to ask for, my brother and I, first time we'd been there. And so she said, well, where do you live? And I said, well, we live in West Dallas. And she said, well, you're not going to college, so I'm going to put you in these classes. So all of a sudden I'm in general math and wood shop and all these other classes, and I don't know any better. Mm-hmm. So I'm doing exactly what this adult told me needed to be done. And so I never realized it. And until the following year, I'm sitting there filling out my schedule, and my older brother comes by, and he looks down, and he says, what are you doing taking these stupid classes for? And I said, this is what they gave me. And he said, give me that. And he walks me to the homeroom teacher. And he says to the homeroom teacher, put him in that algebra and all the other classes. He's too smart to be in these stupid classes. Put him in this. So all of a sudden, I'm in the right classes. I'm taking journalism. I'm in algebra, geometry, and chemistry, and all the other things. But if it hadn't have been for him,
you might be working on a car right now.
Well, and here's the other thing, though. I actually dropped out of high school.
No kidding.
Yeah, I'm a high school dropout. I'm a pretty mischievous kind of kid. And actually, I was boarding school, and so I used to skip school. One semester I skipped 36 days. It's nothing to be proud of, but I passed all the classes, so it'll give you an idea how bored I was at school.
Yeah, you were too smart for your own good.
Yeah.
Did you do any sports or activities outside?
No, and that's really a lot of the problem as to why if I'd have been in some kind of sports at school, mm-hmm. I wouldn't have gotten into all that mess. I would have focused on the sport and getting my grades and so on. So I'm a big believer in getting kids involved in sports and pushing the grades.
Yeah, absolutely. You got a Bachelor of Arts degree in history from North Texas.
Yes.
Go Mean Green. I went to North Texas too. And then a Master of Arts degree in public school administration. Tell me about that.
Yeah, well, I went to North. I'm a graduate of North Texas when I was 28 years of age. So I started college when I was 24. I'm a veteran. I went to the Army. I was drafted in 67, came home in 69. And I worked in a lot of different places between there and the time going to college. But every time I'd work, wherever I'd work, I'd hit the glass ceiling so fast.
Yep.
I'd start looking around for something different. So eventually I said, no, I'm tired of this. So I went to college on the GI Bill. I was married and had a little girl, Monica. Thanks to my wife. She was working and I was going to GI Bill and then working part-time wherever I could. So I became a teacher. They said, you have to declare your major. And I said, I just want to go to college. And they said, no, you got to have a major.
You always had a hard time picking classes.
Yes. And so I said, you know what? My brother's a teacher. My sister's a teacher. Yeah, I think I'll try teaching. And it's the best decision I ever made. Mm-hmm. I loved it. I took to that classroom like, it was like one of the most amazing things to walk into those classrooms because I enjoyed the feeling of being in there with those kids day in and day out.
Mm-hmm. Who would you say your mentors were?
Oh my God! You talk about numbers. Mike Ramos early on, my professors at the college, Dr. Gerald Ponder, who helped me learn to teach, taught me how to do all those kinds of things. And
What years were you at North Texas?
I was at North Texas from 76 to 73 to 75.
Mm-hmm.
And so Dr. Ponder, for one, and then Dr. Jim Huey, who hired me at Thomas Edison Middle School, and who's been a friend ever since, and who pushed me into administration. The reason I got that master's in public school administration is because he walked into my classroom one day with the dean of the School of Administration and said, he wants to talk to you because he has an application. You need to go to school and become an administrator. I hadn't been teaching a year, and this man's already got me being an administrator. So I went, I got it, and then before too long, I was assistant principal at Griner Middle School.
Tell me about San Antonio. How did that happen?
Well, between all of that, I was at Sunset High School, and let me tell you, I'll give it to you in a real quick synopsis. I was assistant principal at Griner. I became assistant principal at Skyline for 3 years. I became principal at Anson Jones Elementary out in Cockrell Hill for 2 years. Went to Sunset High School for 5 years. Went to Washington.
So you did all this before you ever went to San Antonio?
Yes.
Ah.
I went to Washington, D.C. I was the advisor to the U.S. Secretary of Education on dropout prevention.
Mm-hmm.
And so came back, was the area superintendent in the Oak Cliff area in Dallas. And then I went to San Antonio as a superintendent of schools in the Harlandale School District. And that was a life-changing experience.
Yeah?
Yes, that was quite a life-changing experience. I realized that as a superintendent, you can't do what you really want to do, Mike.
Yeah.
And so
Why is that?
because the political board, they all have their own agendas.
Yep.
And it's really not about allowing you to get the problem solved. It's about using you to get themselves elected. And in most elections, if you look around, most across the state and across the country, on school board elections, it's either for or against the superintendent.
Really?
That's
It's a mandate.
Yes. Well, I'm going to go in there and change the district and get rid of this superintendent. You hear that as the hue and cry day in and day out. So the poor superintendent every May, when people are elected to the board, spend their whole time trying to find out if they got a future there or not.
Political battles.
There's no way you can get your work done. And then what I learned in San Antonio, so many of the people who work in the school district are related to the school board members.
Yeah.
And so they tell you, we want you to come here and make it better and clean it up. And then you start, and you just release a bus driver who happened to be the cousin of one of your board members. Mm-hmm. And before you know it, you're backpedaling. And no matter what kind of a good job you do, you can pretty well figure you're out the door. So I swore I'd never go back to do that job.
You had what did you have, an $80 million budget in San Antonio?
Yes, and you know what? They kept telling me they didn't have any money, and they had a lot of money. As a matter of fact, I fixed all the buildings and put money in the bank with the money they had.
Mm-hmm. You put new roofs on all the buildings.
Yes.
You did a sports complex.
Yes.
You did what would be equivalent with a private school to a capital campaign, adding buildings. And I read a lot about what you did there.
All with the money that they already had, Mike. Mm-hmm. And that's the same all over the country. You'd be surprised how much money is actually wasted in those school districts.
That's a good point. I'm glad you brought that up. So a lot of people are aware, at least the people that I've known for 30, 40 years, know that starting in 1983, I started selling all the surplus for the Dallas Independent School District. And the first contract that I did, all the surplus was being stored over on the west side of the Trinity. And what was that school name you said?
Benito Juarez.
It was an elementary.
Yes.
Yeah. And it was just piled up. I mean, it was the biggest mess you ever saw. And of course, the building wasn't designed for storage. It was designed for classrooms.
Yes.
And they just piled it in and piled in. And quite frankly, I'll be blunt. It was like a utopia for a small group of individuals that did not want to be on the radar. How's that? Yeah. So when you talk about waste, there was not just waste, but there was a lot of theft. And here I am. I'm 23, 24 years old, and it's my first exposure to Dallas as far as surplus. I had sold surplus for almost every small school district from Gainesville to Sherman, Bells, Sanger, Pilot Point, all these. Denton, I did Denton for many years. And so then I come to Dallas, and man, that was an eye-opener. And then they moved over to Keast, next to the Dart yard. And then I got another dose of that for about 20 years. But as a taxpayer, it was very hard to watch. And, of course, you know as well as I do, and I'm not just knocking the Dallas Independent School District because it's a beast. It's a beast.
Yes,
and
it is.
And just like you said, it's hard to control a beast, especially when it's politically driven.
Yes, it is completely politically driven. So, and because of that, the things you do know how to fix those things. You have been trained, and you are smart enough to figure it out. But the minute you move in that direction, you might as well start filling out your resume, and because if you make that decision, it's going to define your moment. Yeah. That'll be the hill you'll die on.
Well, I believe it. I mean, I'm seeing things and looking at things and thinking, where did that mixer go? Where did that go? Where did this go? And back in the 80s, we went through this whole period with the FBI investigating. And we had a superintendent that got in trouble for buying furniture for San Antonio at the condo. And then I remember, because they were very good about presenting a front that there was management. So there was a rule. Anything that sold for over anything that was purchased for over $100, we had to write the serial number down. And we'd have page after page after page after page of serial numbers and what it was. And then we had to record the auctions. And we had to do double recordings, one for us to hold on to and one for them. So if there was ever, it's almost like they knew they had lots of problems. And so anyway, I just remember at one point, there was a guy named Mr. Jones, and he was sitting out, or Mr. Robinson. He was a nice guy. He was sitting out on the dock one day, and I showed up to do the auction. We would do an auction about 2 or 3 times a year. And we did everything from the buses to the food service to any of the vocational education classes, down to the portable buildings when they would get rid of the portable buildings. And I just remember Mr. Robinson saying, "Mr. Jones, you got a minute?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "I just want you to know that the FBI lady says you run a real clean auction." So they've been investigating. That makes you really uncomfortable when you think that, you're suspect.
Well, but not only that, Mike. It really lends itself to the idea of transparency.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to do those kinds of things.
Sure.
And let's face it, school districts are like any other business. No matter how hard you work, some people are going to do the wrong things.
Yep.
And you can't protect yourself from them because they look just like every other good person, mm-hmm. until they start doing their little things. So it's a normal part of life.
Yeah. Well, you could write a book, I could write a book.
Well, and it all go back to the same thing. As long as school districts are political entities, mm-hmm. Then the decisions of children's lives and their education is left up to an election in May every year.
Mm-hmm. I was reading some things about your time at Sunset, and of course, your DC, the responsibilities that they were implying for you or giving you to increase the graduation rate because it was, I guess, anemic in some areas, and then talking about assisted in the graduation rate increasing 40 to 70% during the time as principal of Sunset High School. That's pretty remarkable. And then it talks about you were recognized by the national media and the Today Show, the Oprah Winfrey Show, and Christina Show. So there's been a lot of, you've had some nice focus on you
I have.
along the way. And then you also you had a company, Marquez Inc. Tell me about that. Tell me what that did.
Well, what I did was I went consulting. When I left that superintendency in Harlandale, I swore I'd never go back to the
Public
superintendent.
school systems.
No, to the superintendent's job. So I went consulting with a gentleman by the name of Dr. Lee Hanel, and I started doing his work for him. I could do it better than he could because I was a teacher by trade. And so we were talking one day, and he told me, he said, you know, you need to go on and start your own company. He said, you're getting all these clients who want you. He says, I'm getting all these clients who want you rather than me. You need your own company, and you need to take care of them as clients. So I did. And so while working with the work of Dr. Reuben Fierstein out of Israel, I became very familiar with classrooms and how to teach children how to think. And so I kept working, and eventually it evolved into my own systems. I developed a system called Cognitive Development Through Reading Across the Curriculum, where basically I can teach any kid to read and think in any subject, which changes the whole landscape. And so that's what I was doing. I was building that system as I was working out there, school to school. So I was working all over the country.
Mm-hmm. I noticed that you worked with Kaplan.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm very familiar with Kaplan because a lot of us actually obtained our real estate classes from Kaplan. And of course, before that was like Dearborn or something like that. I think it was Dearborn. And before that, we go back generations of different schools of that nature. But Kaplan's, it's a big one. They're a big one.
Yeah.
You worked with Grand Prairie SER, Breakthrough Corporation, the University of North Texas, Dallas Community College District, and a variety of different schools and districts across the country. So you have a pretty good little resume there.
Yeah, but you know what? The one thing it did for me is it made me charming. When you're a consultant, you better darn well learn to be charming or you're not going to eat.
Well, I believe that's true. I believe that's true. So what's the biggest difference between America Can and Texans Can from its origination? How old are we now?
32, 33 years.
Yeah. I remember when we had the anniversary, the 30th anniversary. So it's 32, 33 years old. You come in 2007.
2007. What's
What's the difference between then and now?
Well, I'll put it in a financial way. We had $8 million in assets and $7 million in debt. Today we have $39 million in assets and about $10 million in debt. We're quite a well-functioning corporation, and so very solvent. And then the other thing is we're a real dynamic organization now, because before we were just concentrating on graduating kids, and we only had the social side. We were trying to deal with the social side of students' problems. Now we deal with all the problems that the kids bring. Mm-hmm. We put glasses on them. We have counseling. We have the only 24-hour, 7-day-a-week hotline counseling system in the country for high schools. So the kid can just pick up the phone and call, and there's a certified counselor or psychologist on the other end of the line who will deal with the child's concerns, and it's completely anonymous.
How did that come about? How did you and your board or your whoever your consulting group is, how do you wake up one day and you go, you know what, we're not just going to work on graduation rates, we're going to take this to a different level?
Well, because what you begin to do is you look and see, all right, what's keeping these kids from graduating? What's getting in their way? First of all, you realize that 90% of them can't read on a reasonable level to do much of the work.
Yeah.
So what are you going to do? You're going to teach them to read. Also, you know that they make a lot of bad mistakes. They need to learn to think. And so we concentrate all our efforts academically on teaching them to read and think. And so we have one of the most dynamic systems for teaching reading and thinking anywhere in the world. We have Dr. Fierstein's Instrumental Enrichment, which is a world-renowned system for teaching human beings how to think. And then we have the reading process, which no one else has anywhere in the country either. And so the kids come in, and over a period of time, we're able to get them up to where they can read reasonably, think reasonably, and make good decisions. On the other side, other things that get in their way are simple things like food, like clothing, like a place to live, like a job. All those kinds of things get in the way of their graduation. So if you're going to continue to graduate them and grow the number of kids you graduate, you have to fill in all those needs. And it's only going to happen at the school. And so now we have dual credit college courses. My God, Mike, I could go on forever. All the things we've put into the can to see to it that the kids graduate, and then not only graduate anymore, now we're pushing out to see to it that we take care of them even after they graduate. So it's if you come to the can today, you're going to walk out of there going, how do you guys do this when the kid's only here 4 hours?
Yeah. Well, I know when I came on board years ago, we talked almost entirely about graduation rates. How many kids came in, how many we would get out. Tell me, was it a gradual shift towards because I know that we're actually potentially integrating CAN into the regular school systems.
Yes.
I know that's a goal.
Oh, yes.
I've learned about that the last few years, and I'm thinking, well, that's brilliant because you're not isolated to your own island. You're actually extending it into the public school systems. I know you were looking at San Antonio, and I'm sure some other places too.
We are now in a San Antonio school. Mm-hmm. So we're catching them before they drop out of school or before they wind up at our door. And we're having some good results. The high school we're in is graduating 283 kids this coming year. That's their number. They're hoping to graduate. Well, we're about to add 70 or 80 more to that group.
Wow.
That's 70 or 80 more kids that they would have lost.
Yep.
And so this year they won't lose them. This year they're going to graduate over 350 kids because we're in their school.
How many kids overall, how many campuses do we have now?
Well, counting the one in San Antonio, that one in that high school, we have 14.
14 campuses, primarily Dallas, Houston.
Six in Dallas. Mm-hmm. We have 3 in Houston now. We have 2 in Fort Worth, 2 in San Antonio, and 1 in Austin. Mm-hmm. We have approximately over 5,000 kids.
What's your growth plan?
The San Antonio model. Mm-hmm. It's the most efficient.
Makes more sense.
It makes
fewer campuses to maintain.
Yeah, and the brick and mortar stuff. Everybody's moving from brick and mortar. So if we can house inside the public school systems, we cut down on all their issues, all their problems, and we save a lot of the kids.
Sure. So when I came on board with Texans Can Cars for Kids, we were located on Division in Arlington.
Yes.
And we outgrew it.
Yes.
We just outgrew it. When I started over there, we were selling the cars outside on a ladder.
I remember.
It could be 20 degrees outside with a wind chill like today, or it could be 108 degrees in July. And I just remember standing out there going, there's got to be a better way, Jesus. There's got to be a better way. and now we have the new location, which is new to most people. It's not as, it is a fantastic location for us.
Yes, it is.
And it's easy to get to. People don't realize. I kind of dreaded it in the beginning because I'm thinking I kind of like being in the center of the Metroplex, but the reality was I never went to the west side of the Metroplex. I didn't need to go to Arlington, and I thought I'd have trouble getting through Dallas to get to the location. But Camp Wisdom and the 67, the Marvin D. Love Freeway, has been really a blessing.
Yeah.
And we're meeting the needs of the demographic that needs the vehicles.
Exactly. Those are the individuals who need those older vehicles to get around and have transportation. And yeah.
It's amazing, too, the quality of the vehicles we're getting gets better all the time, and we're starting to get unique vehicles that are like classic vehicles.
Yes,
Our
I know.
donations, I mean, I appeal to anyone that's out there listening to this or that are hearing this story, because I think it is the ultimate American success story of education in a metropolitan area. And I would just tell my friends and neighbors, and I know a lot of them. I'm always talking to somebody on an airplane, because I'm on an airplane 3 or 4 days a week, and I'll be sitting there and talking to somebody. Go, oh yeah, I donated a car to Texans Can, or as it used to be called, Dallas Can Academy. But I really want people to go to our website, carsforkids.org, and check out the inventory that we have. They can get on, towards the end of the week, around Thursday, Friday. They can come out to the location on Fridays, inspect the vehicles, get on the internet, see what we have. They have the ability to register online, put $200 down with a credit card, and they can bid, and then come in on either the weekend or Monday and pay for that car. I don't know a better system. I really don't. And every week we have 2 or 3 really unique, unusual vehicles that are classic. I mean, they're classic. We sold an '85 Cadillac DeVille on Saturday, this past Saturday. That was, it did bring good money, but it was a phenomenal vehicle. You couldn't find it. I mean, you could take it to a car show, and I made that comment. I said, you could take that car to a car show. And the week before, we had like a Nova or something. So I tell people that have the funds, if you need a vehicle, a second vehicle or a third vehicle, or you've got a kid or somebody in your family that needs a vehicle, you need to come out and check out Texans Can Cars for Kids.
Oh,
and
most
we're
definitely.
there, and we're there every week. I think we're off 2 or 3 weekends a year, and that's it. So there's no reason you can't find a vehicle in Dallas that's affordable.
You're not kidding.
If you can't afford that place, you probably are going to be sitting at home for a long time.
Well, and I think it does 2 things. If I'm a donor and I donate that vehicle, then you can be assured that if you donated a vehicle that we could get back running and get it out, that some human being is going to get great benefit from that vehicle that you donated. So you're actually helping. Not only the money from your donation is helping the kids, you're actually helping somebody in the community with a decent vehicle to get around and go to work.
Sure. Zach, I want you to get ready for that spot, but I want to mention real quick before we go there, and I've got several more points I want to make before we go. This time goes by quick, because we have something to talk about all the way through. And this has been I've been wanting to do this for quite some time. I've been talking about having you on probably for 6 months. And so it always takes time. Busy people are hard to catch. Over the years, people recognize Texans Can Cars for Kids because of the celebrity spokesman that we've had. We've had a great relationship with the local television stations, from Randy Galloway, who used to be on WBAP, to Dale Hansen at Channel 8, Nolan Ryan down in Houston, and I know all these guys. Babe Laufenberg, former Cowboy, and also at Channel 11 here.
John
sports
McKay.
guy.
John McKay recently.
Well, he's my last one I mentioned. John McKay, who just retired on Friday from WFAA, and John and I text each other all the time. And I'm appealing to John to come on this show. I think he is a phenomenal, good human being, one of the best people we could have ever gotten as a spokesman, because he's a kind human. And
well, it's his integrity. If that gentleman says something's good, you rest assured.
Yep.
You just don't get him to do things
Yep.
for anybody.
Yeah. Did I see that Cynthia Izagari?
Yes.
Is she our new spokesman?
Yes, that's our new spokesperson.
The very first fundraiser that Izzy did when she came to Dallas, we did together, and it was for a civic center. I think it was in West Dallas, and I just remember. And of course, she's from Dallas.
Mm-hmm.
She's a Dallas product, and I think she went to North Texas.
Uh-huh.
And anyway, she's great. She's on Channel 8, so we give some shout outs to Cynthia, and we're friends. We're friends not just in the media circuit, but also on Facebook and stuff like that. People want to know what's going on. You can pretty well catch up with people on Facebook. You ready to run that spot, Zach?
Yeah, Mike, I got it ready to go whenever you need it.
I'm ready.
I guess now's the time.
Now's the time.
Here it is.
Transform their lives. When you donate to Cars for Kids, you're changing the lives of kids who need a second chance at an education and at life. Thanks to your donations, Texans Can has been transforming lives for over 34 years. Whether it runs or not, donate your car or truck today. They'll even pick it up for free. Call or visit carsforkids.org to donate today. Remember, write off the car, not the kid.
That could have been John McKay.
Yes.
That sounded like a John McKay spot. And I'm assuming, Zach, you saw that because where I was sitting. Of course, I can't see that monitor. And, Richard and I are sitting there going, "Well, that's a good one."
No, it's a great one. Yeah, it's got a good
Now,
look.
did you say you have a video also to show me?
I do. I'm just kind of going to kind of roll that in the background, just some B-roll. So don't worry about that. You guys keep talking, and I'll just kind of let that happen.
Okay. Tell me about anytime you're in the executive ladder of something as successful as America Can and Texans Can, you got to have people.
Yeah,
You got to
definitely.
you got to have
a
great
team. You have to have a team.
You have to have great instructors. How many teachers do you have now?
We have over 200 teachers, about 250 or more.
200. Wow, that's a lot.
Well, yeah, and because the thing that we do is the kids are in front of teachers. Most schools that do what we do use computers, and they hand kids packets. We don't believe in that. We really want to teach the kids and see to it that they learn something new, and especially if they learn to read. My God, Mike, we have kids that show up who can't even read a word,
Yeah.
not one single word.
Wow.
And so our task is to teach that kid how to read because their potential for life is zero. So you start with zero. Every day we keep that kid longer. Every day we teach him more. We teach him how to read. Every day that kid's life changes.
They're like sponges.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so
How much harder is it to teach a kid that's high school age versus when they're growing up, young, seventh,
it takes long.
third grade?
It takes longer. Dr. Fierstein's work proves that they can be taught, that they can be changed, but it's a much longer period of time because there's so much more they have to learn than when you're young. So, yeah, it takes longer, but we have to keep them longer.
If you have a kid that, let's say a young man or a young lady that has gotten in trouble and we're trying to integrate them back in the system, how do you qualify them to come back into this system?
Well, we really will take any of them no matter what. It's kind of like what we say. A kid shows up at the Can one morning or one afternoon with hope in their heart, they've come to the right place. Because the minute they hit that door, we're going to do everything humanly possible to make them successful. And so we're going to, whatever the kid needs, we're going to work really hard to get. So it's just one of the unique aspects of what we do.
We, you and I both know Skyline High School, and
Yes,
we were talking about the vocational education stuff. And I'm just going to touch on this real quick because it's kind of it's an interesting thing that we've gotten into. We used to have vocational education classes where we taught young ladies how to sew. We taught young men how to work on automobiles, how to run a welder, how to woodworking, and all of these skills that seem to be missing today. In fact, I honestly don't know that we could run Texas without our Hispanic population because they are the skilled workers that can do all these things. And so many of the general population today, children today, kids come in, half the time they don't know where food comes from. They think you just get food at the grocery store. And they think that every car has to be fixed at the dealership. And these guys just show up and do all this woodworking work.
Yeah.
So, back when I was doing all the auctions for the DISD, we liquidated the vocational education class at Skyline. This has been back in the late 80s, early 90s. And I remember it was a phenomenal facility. I mean, it had everything. It was like the Cadillac. In fact, it was the largest in the United States.
Yes.
And we auctioned it off. And, I was glad. I got paid well. But I questioned it. And I asked the guy, I said, "What are you going to put in here?" He says, "Computers." I said, "Computers." So, oh, okay. So now, looking back over this 25 years, what do you think about that? What do you think about education and vocational education?
I have to admit, I was one of the ones who said, because we were not represented in the college situation, college circumstances, I was one of the ones that said, no, the kids need to go to college. What I really meant was we need to be inclusive. more Hispanic kids need to go rather than be pushed into the vocational. Remember, I went to Crozier Tech. It was the vocational school.
Yeah.
And all the people in that building all had brown faces. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like you were relegated to go to that school because that was your future.
Yeah.
So it seemed like a negative at the time. What you realize now is a lot of the people I went to school with at that time, when they left, got some very good jobs that they kept for 20, 30, 40 years.
Yeah.
Because they developed those skills. So they actually had a way to feed themselves and become members of the middle class.
Sure.
So as I look back, I say, you start to think, because I was at Skyline for 3 years, and they had some fantastic places where the kids could learn all those skills and actually move out of there and go out and find a decent job. I think we forgot in America that not everybody is supposed to go to college. Yeah. I think what we got crazy about college. So somebody's got there. I still remember Mr. Guzik was the principal saying to me one day when I had to suspend a kid. I said, Mr. Guzik, if I suspend him for 3 days, he may not come back to school. He said, Richard, somebody's got to pick up the trash. And he said to me, and that's not a bad job. All you have to do is maintain your dignity and go to work. He said, there's nothing wrong with it. We look at those things as wrong. He said, that's working, but people need it. And so now we look and we go, we need the plumbers, we need the electricians, we need the framers, we need the carpenters, my God, you're exactly right. So we're partnering with the Texas State Technical College. We're pushing our kids there. We've got programs all over the place. We have internships. We have the construction trades coming in and hiring our kids. HEB in San Antonio comes in and hires kids. Logistics, truck driving. They're a huge corporation.
Yep.
But we've got a lot of people coming in offering jobs to our kids. We had a kid leave us who learned how to do that ABC pest and lawn, passed all the tests. That kid left is making $45,000 a year right out the door.
Right.
And you go, and one of the young ladies that also got this certification, the gentleman liked her so much, the people at the company, they're actually putting her through college.
Yep.
So no,
you're aware.
We have, Mike, at one of our schools in Fort Worth, we have an actual fully functional optical clinic. The kids have learned how to make glasses, how to do all those things.
Wow.
And so we're actually bringing people in who need them, and we're putting glasses on people in that community.
That's just another reason. See, it all starts at the top. It all starts at the top. Raul, you know what I'm talking about. Absolutely. It's leadership. And we've had a constant dialogue now for going on an hour, and I love, that's why I can tell you something. Yes, selling cars on Saturday to support America Can is something I enjoy doing. Does everybody want to give up every Saturday of their life? No, they don't. But I'm telling you, and I showed you this picture, and I'm going to show this. Zach, I want to show this picture right here. Can you see this?
Yeah, I can see that on there.
Okay. There was a little Hispanic boy that came up to me, and after the auction, right at the very end, and he drew me a picture last year, and now his name is Luis. And what's interesting is he's got the auctioneer up there. He's got our computer guy. He's got our logo. There's the car coming through. We've got our ringman, Philip and Mario and Austin. And it's really funny because on one side he says painting by Luis, and then on the other side he put Luis de Painter. So he was differentiating, the painting and who he was. And let me tell you something. I put him on Facebook. I let him come up and introduce himself, and I showed that. And I told him, I said, I'm going to take this, I'm going to have it framed, and I'm going to put it where I can see it every day. And let me tell you something. That kid will never forget that.
That's right.
And his parents will certainly never forget it. And I think that's what we're talking about.
That's it.
It's a people thing, and it's compassion, and it's love for mankind and humankind, and doing the right things to benefit others, because we're not here very long. I've been telling people this for the last 20, 30 years. We're just here, just a pebble, and we're not here for very long. So we've got to maximize our time. Speaking of that, you've been basically working for how many years have you been out of college now? Where you've been, and
Wow.
not just out of college, but between your military service and everything, what are we talking about? 50 years?
Yeah.
50 years. Now you can only do this so long. So you're prepared to move another 5 or so, at least 5 or 10 years?
Well, I'll put it to you this way, Mike. Every day, every morning I wake up, I've got something else I'd like to see done. One of the things I want to see done is I want to see every kid in school learn to read. And I now know it can be done. Mm-hmm. I now know what the answer is. So I have to see to it that we push this thing out and we help people, because reading and thinking is the thing that'll change your entire life.
Yeah.
It'll make you who you. So that has to be done. We want to push out this whole aspect of putting schools, our type of schools, in high schools, so that we stop this constant bleeding of human beings going nowhere and creating issues for us in the future. So Dr. Fierstein puts it in a very good way. He said, only a human can teach another human how to think. So it is about humans. And then the other thing is, I still remember, the nuns and all the others, I remember all they used to say, if you want to save your soul, you have to give it away to other people. And so I still have a lot to give. And because I have a lot to give, I hope the good Lord decides to let me work till my last day.
Well, I hope you live to be 110.
You'll find me working if I do.
I have no doubt about that. Raul, do you have anything you want to add, or you want to tell us anything about social media? If they want to look up the different places to learn more about America Can or Texans Can, Cars for Kids, or just Texans Can in general, give me your 30-second to a minute overview of what they can do to
Absolutely,
check it out.
absolutely. You could find all the information about the schools on social media. We're on all social media platforms, including Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and there's multiple ways you can be involved in our organization. We have our event calendars. We have fundraisers as well. And earlier, Mike, you were talking about the auction, and you can actually we live stream the auction every Saturday, so you can see the type of vehicles that we have. So it's not only the donation, but it's also purchasing the vehicles as well. And one thing I wanted to mention is really beautiful is that once we really care for these students, it's just really beautiful to see that it comes full circle, because we also have alumni who are now donating to the Cars for Kids organization. So there's many ways you can be a part of what we're doing, and it's a really beautiful thing. So you can find us online.
And a lot of the kids give back too.
Absolutely.
A lot of the kids give back. They participate at Texans Can.
Absolutely.
And we also have fundraisers. We do golf tournaments, and I've played in the golf tournament. You've been gracious enough to invite me to that. And we're always looking for sponsors. We're looking for table sponsors and things of that nature. So if we have corporate friends or individuals who have the funds and want to participate with America Can or Texans Can, we welcome them.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Well, guys, I think we've pretty much covered the overview, and
Well, actually, Mike,
Yes, sir.
we have a lot more to talk about. So one day, call me back, and I'll walk you through the rest of
we'll
it.
do round two. Well, I'm thrilled to have you with me, because Texans Can takes up quite a bit of my time, and it's my favorite time. I told you this earlier. It's my favorite time. Favorite day of the week is when I go do that auction, and I get to do a lot of cool stuff. My
I do.
career.
I see you. I see you on Facebook all the time, and where you are. It's pretty exciting.
It is. But I tell you what, nothing's more rewarding than that 3 or 4 hours that I'm selling those cars and knowing where that money is going, and seeing your face show up and being able to introduce you. We had one of our principals show up Saturday, and he came through, and we introduced him, and it's always good to see the people. And, we want the people to know that there are really people behind what's going on, and that's why we thank the people that work with us at the pay windows, the people that manage it. those are very important. You know, you can't do it without a team. We got a great team, not only at Texans Can Cars for Kids, but also the instructors and teachers in the schools. So
It's like I told the board, at this particular juncture, we've assembled the best team we've ever had at the Can.
yeah, I believe that. Raul, I'm going to count on you to get the story out and get this show out there where we can share the information and spread the gospel of America Can and Texans Can. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of myself and Richard Marquez, the President CEO of America Can, Texans Can, and also Raul, thank you for being here, and we appreciate you being here very much. We look forward to the next episode of the Mike McGavel Jones Show. If you get a chance, come out and see us at Texans Can on any Saturday, and we appreciate you so much. So on behalf of everyone here that's part of this show, Zach, thank you very much. God bless, and we'll see you next time.